Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is your host, Constant Taylor. Today, we have a very special guest on the show, and they're going to share some very exciting information with us. So, if you're looking to increase your personal and professional effectiveness in the area of sales, then you've come to the right place. Our special guest today is Jack Daly. Jack has been speaking professionally for over 20 years, and the content that he primarily speaks on is sales, sales management, and corporate culture. He's based out of San Clemente, California, and his books include Hyper Sales Growth, The Sales Playbook, and The Paper Napkin Wisdom that will be released this coming Friday, October 2015. Now, Jack, that's quite an impressive resume. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Constant. I'm looking forward to it.
I'd like to kick off the show by asking you if you could tell the listeners a little bit about your business and how you help your clients.
Sure. So we are a sales and sales management training and speaking company, and my audiences very often include CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs. That's one grouping. A second grouping are sales managers, and the third grouping are sales people. And each of those three disciplines has a different a core of needs that we basically fulfill.
Okay, and then how do you initiate your engagements, and how do you start off? What's the first thing you do? Do you do assessments of the individuals, the corporation? How does that work?
Well, very often what happens is people will see me at different venues where I am a keynote speaker, and they'll inquire as to what we might be able to bring to the party to help them. So we go through an extensive phone conversation with the leaders of the company, typically the business owner, CEO, entrepreneur, and your sales manager, and need to understand a little bit about their business and what their strengths and weaknesses are. That's all done by me personally on the phone. And then we're able to narrow down whether we need to really spend our time in the sales management side of the house, which is recruiting, training, coaching, building, and developing salespeople. And that's really how you scale a business in a hyper growth way. Or whether it's an area where we need to spend time showing salespeople the proven systems and processes to include key activities, pipeline management, leveraging the internet, building a touch system, and all of the things that a salesperson needs to do to operate at a level of excellence.
What are some of the common problems that your customers face?
Well, it depends again on who that customer is. If the customer, so to speak, is the sales leadership team or the management side of the house, the biggest thing that we hear from them is where do we find good salespeople? How can we hire great salespeople? And another question we're very often tasked with is how do I motivate my salespeople? How do I get them wanting to get out there and get charged up and bring in additional business? If we're tasked with, hey, our biggest issues are we're just getting beat up on price, or we're getting beat up by we can't get our products out there in the marketplace because we're getting lost amongst all of the other competitors. How do we differentiate ourselves from the competition? How do we overcome the objections of I'm already happy doing business with the person I'm doing business with, or your price is too high, or I've got a strong relationship with somebody else? Those types of things are more sales oriented, and in each one of those categories, whether it's the sales management or the sales side of the house, based upon my own personal experience, having built 6 companies, international companies, all of which were very fast-growing companies, and the last 20 years working with companies worldwide on specifically these issues, we have the proven systems and processes to overcome whatever those objections are or challenges are.
Okay. Does your methods include existing Salesforce evaluations to see where the talent level is at that particular moment?
Without a doubt, and you're really hitting on a key point here, and that is that if you were to take, and I just have the statistic for the U.S., but I suspect it's applicable worldwide. If you were to take all of the salespeople collectively in the United States, all industries combined, the bottom 25% in numbers are only producing less than 6% of the sales, and the top 25% are producing north of 60%. And so we've got a lot of bodies out there that we're paying for that aren't delivering on the goods. And the additional problem is that the customers don't really want them in their shops anyway. So one of the things that we really need to do to build a hyper sales growth type of team is we have to assess what we currently have and make sure that we move out the people that are not capable so that we can then increase in the quality and quantity of our sales team.
Okay, excellent. And then so with the existing thoroughbreds left, then you're able to effectively develop them and tweak and coach them into being more effective.
Yeah. So you know what? Here's what I would tell you, that sports teams at any level in any sport are run better than most businesses. They wouldn't think about putting their players on the field without a playbook, and they wouldn't think about putting their players out on the field without practice and proper preparation. And yet, all too often, most companies are doing exactly that. And so there are specific proven systems and processes that should be followed consistently by every salesperson on the team, rather than a team of sales mavericks out there. Because one of the things I can tell you is I had a sales team of 2,600 salespeople on the streets. And what I was infamous for saying was, there aren't 2,600 best ways to sell this stuff. Let's figure out the best way to sell it and consistently sell it in that fashion.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Now, what is your background? Where did you start? And what inspired you to move into sales and professional development consulting?
Yeah, so it's a long history. I'll try to concise it down. I started selling at the age of 7, and I owned the market and charged twice the price of every kid I competed with. At 12 years old, I built my first company and had 5 employees by the time I was 13 years old. They did all the work, and I kept 70% of the money. Wow. And that's when I decided that someday I wanted to be a business owner and entrepreneur. After going to school, I left there, went to work for Arthur Andersen for a couple of years, and then went off on my entrepreneurial journey and built 6 companies into national firms, and were all very fast-growing companies. By the age of 46, I had run into an individual that I had hired as an outside consultant, speaker, trainer, coach to help me grow my business. And Jim was his name. He did such a tremendous job, and I fell in love with what he was doing, all the way to the degree that I said to him, someday I'm going to do what you do. And he turned to me and said, if you're ever serious, call me and we'll do it together. And a year or 2 later, I called him and said, let's go. And that's how I got into that business, and that was 20 years ago.
Wow. That is a fantastic story, and it's amazing how the entrepreneurial spirit manifests itself at a very, very young age. So you can look and see who the people are who are going to do something. I mean, that could even be a great behavioral interview question, because at 6 or 7 years old, I was doing the same thing with chocolate bars, buying them for 50 cents and selling them for $1 in middle school. So that's an excellent story.
You gotta love it. My 7-year-old story was all built around potholders, and these little girls were selling them to moms and grandmoms. And I said, "There's not a little boy selling them. I bet I could sell to every grandmom. They'd love to buy from a little boy." So there's always a way to figure out how to differentiate yourself from the competition. And the key to getting into new business is exactly that. How can you be different?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
What are some of the popular misconceptions about what you bring to the table, your services, and how can you address those?
Yeah, so some of the things that we hear are people are either too busy or the training is too expensive or it's not unique to an industry. We hear an awful lot of that from time to time, and quite frankly, the way I look at the world of training is that it is not an expense; it's an investment, and everything that you invest should have a return on that investment. And so, again, I'll go back to the sports analogy. There isn't a sports team in any sport at any level that would ever consider putting their players on the field without professional and purposeful training. And so, can you imagine a coach of any sports team saying, I don't have the time or I don't have the dollars to properly prepare my team to go out on the court, field, or ice? And so those are really a reflection of a not understanding of what the value of the product or service is. And so the good news is in our company, if we run into that initially, it's an objection, if you will, that is quickly overcome once you get someone to understand the value. I would also add one other thing, and that is we would love opportunities to go at risk in terms of our fee and tie our fee to an increase in the revenues of the company, because if you want to talk about leverage, we'll make a considerably greater amount of money as a training company tied to the increase in revenues, and that's putting your money where your mouth is.
Absolutely. Probably contingent upon them implementing your suggestions and ideas.
For sure. What's really interesting is as soon as you start to run the numbers for the client, it becomes very obvious that that's not in the best interest of them. The other thing is, as I like to point out, if your concern is fee, what happens is that you would be, if you tied me to your revenues, arguably you wouldn't want a significant increase in the revenues because it would increase my fee. And so really what we want to do is we want to have the leadership ownership of the company on the same side of the field as the training resource. And once we get through that, everybody just kind of smiles around the table and says, let's go to work.
Okay. Now, with the last 60 seconds, I would like for you to convey a message, a central theme, or concept to the listeners, whereby if they don't get anything else out of this interview, you would like for them to get this. What is that?
The biggest thing that I can tell you that holds companies back is that something I call the 3 sins of sales management. The first sin being the CEO or business owner also wears the hat of the sales manager. That means that you have assigned the sales manager to a part-time position, and quite frankly, it's a full-time position. A second sin is we take our best sales producer and turn them into the sales manager, and they're entirely different skill sets, and the history is not many successes there. And the third sin is where we take the best sales performer, make them the sales manager, and ask them to continue to sell, which means that they're bifurcated in their efforts, and the way they're compensated very often means that they'll spend more time selling and not the time spending on the sales management. And the key to scaling or hyper growing your company is sales management. If you want to grow your sales people in quantity and quality. And if you grow your salespeople in quantity and quality, they in turn will grow your sales, and that job is sales management.
Very, very powerful and well done. Now, if the listeners would like to contact your organization and find out about more about how you can help them with your sales consultancy services, how can they do that?
So on the web, our website is jackdaly, DALY.net, or 888-298-6868. And that's jackdaly, DALY.net.
Excellent. Well, Jack, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today. We really appreciate it, and I know the listeners do too.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.